Maat is represented by a feather. The number of people that have tried to find things in the Valley of the Kings, and that would stop her from being able to enter the afterlife because her heart would then be fed to Amut, the devourer. Hi everybody, welcome to Echoes of History. I'm Gemma Renshaw. I am an archaeologist and Egyptologist, and I am excited today to take a deep dive with you into the DLC, The Curse of the Pharaohs, for Assassin's Creed Origins, where our hero Bayek from the original game, it's now 34 BC, and he has been tasked with finding out what is going on in Thebes, where a mystical artifact has resurrected some of the ancient pharaohs. You might recognize some of these names, people like Nefertiti, Tutankhamun. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, please like and subscribe to Echoes of History and share it with all your friends. Be warned, this video is going to contain spoilers about the plot of the game.
Let no one unleash its power on those we once swore to protect.
Welcome! Welcome in Thebes. You need a room? A bigger shield? A bodyguard?
Alright, this is our great introduction to the Curse of the Pharaohs right here. Our hero Bayek has just arrived, immediately met with the shadow of Nefertiti. We know it's Nefertiti because of the headdress. That's actually quite a significant way of identifying her, because there is a very famous image of Nefertiti, which is a bust where she is shown wearing that headdress, and they've quite clearly used that as the model for her character.
You survived the curse? They will speak of you throughout Thebes.
Make sure no one speaks of me. I was told you would help me. This is for you.
So Bayek's now talking to a lady called Merti. She's an Egyptian who lives in Thebes. She is a little bit suspicious. Not sure I would trust her. But she helps our hero Bayek, so that's all good. She has an interesting sort of look. She's wearing a wig, which would be pretty common for the Egyptians. We know that even when they weren't just the priests, they would still often shave their head and wear wigs. And this is partly, we think, because of the heat, but also just because, lice, other nasties. It's much cleaner to just not have hair and wear a wig in its place. So this wig that she's wearing is actually really nicely drawn. We have a lot of evidence for what that sort of thing might have looked like from temple walls and things like that. So even though we don't have very many wigs, there are a few, we do have a lot of pictures of people wearing them, and they look basically exactly like that.
Beetle down from a horse's ass. What is this?
Oh, this is really fun, actually. In this clip, we're meeting Sekhmet here, who's speaking, and she's playing a game with this Roman soldier. And I don't know if you noticed, but what they're doing is they're just throwing dice, and these dice seem to be 20-sided dice. Now, we do have some examples of these that actually existed. They are largely from the Greco-Roman period, so that is this time period. But we have dice from earlier than that, so a regular 6-sided die. We do have examples of that from earlier. So whether or not they would have played a game like this, I don't know, we don't have the evidence for, but we do know that they liked games and they had other types of game. So the most famous Egyptian game is called Senet, where you have a board and pieces, and I think the aim is to get your pieces to the other side of the board. But we have those from many periods. They're depicted in papyri and on tomb walls as well. So we have a lot of evidence for the Egyptians liking things like this and wanting to play games. So I actually think it's a really nice thing to have included. I like Sekhmet. I think she's my favourite. She's a bit of a gambler. She's an Egyptian, but if you look at her outfit's kind of a little bit inspired by Greek, I think, as well. The colours, particularly ancient Egyptian clothing in the sort of earlier periods probably would have had less colour to it. And we know that from depictions on tomb walls and such things that a lot of the time they were depicted wearing white. So it probably means that white or plain linen was really what they went for most of the time. And people who were wearing clothes that were not like that usually had a specific purpose. So later on, we're going to see some priests who are dressed in a particular way. And it's kind of things like that you would notice from actual Egyptian depictions on tomb walls.
You'll see.
The Temple of Hatshepsut. Yeah, so the Temple of Hatshepsut there that we can see, actually what we're looking at on the left, that's not the Temple of Hatshepsut, that's the Temple of Thutmosis III. Hatshepsut is the one on the right. This is in a place called Deir el-Bahri, and it's the cliff behind. So all three of these temples are all in Deir el-Bahri. But Hatshepsut's temple is actually really nicely depicted in this game. I don't think we get to go in it very much here because it's got a Roman encampment in it. And in the game, those are pretty dangerous and you don't want to go near them. But the temple actually looked a lot like what it looks like now. And what it looks like now is reconstructed from its ruins. So the Polish archaeological expedition has been there for quite a number of years now, and they have painstakingly put everything back together. So obviously on the site, it was in ruins, put it back together. So now it's back to being its three-tiered temple that it would originally have been. So we've entered here, the tomb of Queen Nefertiti, which Nefertiti was supposed to be buried in the royal tomb at Amarna, or Akhenaten, which was a city that herself and her husband Akhenaten, who we're going to meet later, they basically built it from the ground up. And it was because they had decided that they needed a new city because they wanted to take Egyptian religion in a new direction. They wanted to focus on a god that had not previously really been the focus of any kind of cult, the Aten. So the Aten is the sun disk. So it's literally the round disk that you see in the sky that is the sun. That is what they wanted to worship as the god. And then the people would worship them as the intermediary between the people and the god. So they decided that they needed a new city to do this because presumably there just wasn't an Aten cult anywhere else.
Are you a thief? A desecrator? Do you steal from the dead?
This part's really nice when so Bayek is now going into the underworld, basically. He just passed through something that's called a false door. A false door allows you to connect the living world and the world of the dead. Now, he's just crossed a bridge, and as we were crossing, I don't know if you were able to hear it, but there were voices that were saying things to him. And this is a really, really nice touch because it brings to mind something that we Egyptologists call the negative confession. Now, this is a spell in the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead was meant to help you get your soul into the afterlife. And one of the things that you had to do was you had to meet these judges and you had to tell them that you hadn't done something wrong. So you needed to know their names. You had to say, I know you, I know your name, and then name them. And then you had to say, I have not done whatever evil thing they had accused you of. So the fact that they put that as you enter these areas of the underworld is really nice, and I like it because it's realistic, you know, and it's what we would expect to hear. Unfortunately, these days, I don't think we would know the answers, so we would be in trouble. We've entered Aaru. Aaru is the Field of Reeds, which is a paradise. And this does look very nice, although they're not reeds. And the word actually means rushes, so I'm not sure why they chose to use the wheat, other than the fact that it looks very pretty. And lots of New Kingdom tomb paintings have these depictions of people in the afterlife kind of threshing wheat or sowing and harvesting and that kind of thing. So it might have been influenced by that. It is a really nice depiction of the afterlife. I think that this is Nefertiti's afterlife, I should have said. We're going to explore a couple of different versions of the afterlife in the game. This one is specifically for Nefertiti, so you can see there are lots of statues around, statues of her with her special crown on, and all the sort of boats. Again, the boats being there, considering that we're in fields, seems a bit strange. But then when you remember that the Egyptians also thought that Ra would cross the heavens in a boat, the boats were the most common transport that you could have because the Nile was the easiest way to traverse Egypt. It kind of makes sense.
Something was stolen from the Pharaoh. I would return it.
You do.
All right, so Bayek is talking to a guy here who is a priest. We're still in the underworld here, so this is, not the world of the living. But this person is dressed as a Sem priest. And a Sem priest was responsible for the rites that would help you as when you were deceased to enter the afterlife. And the leopard skin is something that the Sem priest would have worn. So I'm not sure why they're all wearing them. It might just be because they are priests and it is a costume that was associated with priests. But there were many different types of priest, not just the Sem priest. So, for example, there was also something we call a lector priest. And a lector priest was responsible for the knowledge, the rituals, knowing what the rituals were. And if there were libraries in the temple, for example, they would look after that kind of thing. So I think we're summoning Nefertiti now to put her soul to rest. Well, you can see the Aten on the chair there. So the little Aten with the rays coming down, that is actually how the Aten was depicted in the art of the time. So you would get the sun disk, and then you would have rays coming down, and at the end of the rays there would be little hands giving the symbol Ankh, which means life.
Nefertiti. Was she a pharaoh or a god?
This part is interesting because this is actually kind of related to what happens in the other games. When somebody is assassinated, they have this little cut scene where there's sort of a reconciliation, if you like, of why did that person act the way they did and what does that mean. In that particular scene, we saw Nefertiti going forward and picking up an orb. They have linked that to the Aten. It makes a lot of sense because the artifact is an artifact of power. And if you found it, it gave you this power. You probably would see yourself as a god and that you should be worshipped by the people. So I actually kind of like that. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Amun Ra Horakti. Secrets of expression and shimmering of form.
So we're looking at Isadora here. She is inside the temple of Amun at Karnak. She is depicted here as the god's wife of Amun. The god's wife of Amun is a title that wasn't really around during the Ptolemaic period. It was actually something that came from a bit earlier. So I think the first god's wife of Amun might have been Hatshepsut in the New Kingdom. It's something that happened for a bit, but then fell out of fashion, then came back again later, then fell out of fashion again. So I actually don't mind this because I think that there's no reason why, in this time period, it couldn't have come back into fashion again. Even though we don't know of any god's wives of Amun during this period, there's no reason why it couldn't have come back. The depiction of her is also quite interesting because what she's wearing, it's kind of reminiscent of Elizabeth Taylor playing Cleopatra, but it's not just that. It actually also looks a little bit like there is a statue of a god's wife of Amun who was called Karamama. And it's a small statue. I think it's in the Louvre. It's a bronze. And she's wearing a sort of outfit that looks a bit like what she's wearing. This is obviously stylized, but it has the same sort of shape to it. So the sort of thing covering the shoulders and a similar sort of headdress. This headdress is bigger and it really is very reminiscent of the Cleopatra film. But I think it's great. I think she looks great.
Speak to them. Then tell me this is not the wrath of Amun.
Please, Bayek, join us for the ritual. See how we appease the Pharaoh Akhenaten.
All right, so we're following another priest now. This priest is called Jehuti. Again, like you can see that he is wearing the leopard skin as well, but he's also got this kind of skull cap thing on, which again is something that some priests wore, particularly associated with the god Ptah, who was a god of craftsmen. They also have quite a lot of different names. So before we met the god's wife of Amun, whose name was Isidora. That's a Greek name. Jehuti is a very Egyptian name. Jehuti is actually the Egyptian word for the god Thoth. We're watching Bayek take part in some sort of ritual here. I'm not sure what this ritual is about, because I can't remember. But I think this is to do with the rituals specific to the Aten. So realistically, we don't really have very many of those, or we don't have information available about rituals to the Aten, because the city that Akhenaten and Nefertiti moved the court to, Akhenaten, was deconstructed after they had died. So a lot of the information about things like this that might have existed, we don't have anymore.
I will find a way in.
Look for a statue in the archives, pointing towards some crumbling scrolls. One speaks of the Aten and a temple lost for centuries.
Temple of the Aten, lost for centuries. He's probably talking about either the city of Akhenaten, or there was a temple that Akhenaten made just outside of the temple at Karnak. Right, so we've gone inside the tomb of Akhenaten. Now, this is the afterlife of Akhenaten, and it's called Aten. So this is something that's very specific, I think, to him. He would have wanted the cult that he created in life to continue in the afterlife and for it to just, go on as it was. I actually really love this depiction of the afterlife, even though technically he's one of the baddies in this game, but it's so light, and the sun disk and the brightness, it just looks really, really pretty, and I like it a lot. I also think that the kind of the whiteness of the columns and everything in here is actually quite nice, because Akhenaten was a new city, and a lot of what we have are things that got very old over time. So something that's kind of recreating what Akhenaten might have looked like should have been very nice and clean and new. Now here's Akhenaten. So the statues in the background do look like the statues that we have, the evidence that we have for Akhenaten. The majority of them not seated like those ones in the background, but standing. There was a very particular style of art for depicting himself and Nefertiti, which we call Amarna style. Amarna is the name of the modern village where Akhenaten was. It's really distinctive. So outside of them and a few of their officials and a little bit Tutankhamun, that kind of the artistic style that they used, where they had very exaggerated bodies, doesn't really exist. And the iconography of the Aten with the sun disk and the hands, the rays in the hands, that also doesn't exist outside of this time period. So it was a very, very specific thing.
Nefertiti and Akhenaten are no more. I defeated them in the Duat.
You have seen the land of the dead, yet still live.
No. It was a trick of the mind.
Here we are inside the temple. This is Karnak Temple, the precinct of Amun-Ra. Just Amun-Ra.
I do not need to know what you have
This
done.
temple, I think it's possibly still one of the largest temple complexes ever built. It contains 3 precincts. One is for Amun, one is for his consort, called Mut, and the other one was for their son, called Khonsu. And over the years, this temple constantly got upgraded and expanded on. It was in use for basically the entire time from the Middle Kingdom all the way up to the Roman period.
Soldiers coming. Please, you should not be seen. Here.
You're behind these soldiers at my door.
You lied to me in Thebes.
Don't be naive. I told you all I could. If I betrayed the others, I would be dead already.
The relic. You knew of its power.
Well, Merti's house looks like she
Until you came to my shop,
is one of the elite. She's got lots of nice things in here. Houses belonging to the poor would generally have had maybe 1 or 2 rooms. We don't often have a lot of evidence for houses of the ancient Egyptians, just because the modern towns tend to be on top of the old towns, so archaeologists haven't been able to investigate them very often. Those that we do have, workers' villages, for example, those tend to be smaller houses, not very many rooms in each house people would have shared. But a lot of the houses in the game are sort of structured in such a way that they have rooms on the downstairs and they have an upstairs, but a lot of the time the upstairs has an open roof, which we think is something that they would have had. So it's very hot in Egypt. Sometimes we think that people used to sleep on the roof because it was just cooler out there. The one thing that's not super probable about this is the ceiling has wooden beams on it, which was not really the way these types of houses, even the wealthy houses like this, would have been constructed, because wood was very expensive. So wood would have been used around the door frame sometimes, and areas where, you needed support. You needed something strong.
A ritual long forgotten.
Take it. I am ready to leave this cursed land. The Claimer of Hearts comes for me.
Oh, this part's quite good, actually. The Claimer of Hearts. So she's talking about the guardian of the guardian of Anubis that has appeared here, who has presumably come to fight her or take her. Anubis presided over a ritual or something that happened on your way to the afterlife called the weighing of the heart. Now, I believe that Claimer of Hearts was in fact a title sometimes associated with him, because he would weigh your heart against a feather, which represented something called Maat. Maat is a very difficult concept to try and explain, but it's sort of like, we don't have a word for it in English, but it sort of means cosmic order, sort of justice, those kind of things, or the balance between, what's right and what's wrong, or order and chaos. And so your heart would be weighed against the feather to see whether or not it was heavier. Merti was worried that her heart was heavy, so she thought that the Claimer of Hearts had come to take her heart, to weigh it. She would be found with her heart weighing heavily, and that would stop her from being able to enter the afterlife, because her heart would then be fed to Amut, the devourer.
You care nothing for our ancestors. You rape their tombs. Our history.
Atamis would desecrate them without my help. At least this way I protect what I can.
Protect? This is nothing but going to you. More drachma to lose on the roll of a dice.
So they're talking about tomb robbing here. Tomb robbing, I would say, has always been a problem. So as we've encountered before when we looked at the pyramids were found empty. Many of the tombs in the Valley of the Kings, where the New Kingdom pharaohs were buried, found empty. And actually, we think that a lot of the time, the first instance of tomb robbing happened in ancient times. So sometimes not even very long after the pharaoh was interred in the tomb, the robbing could have occurred.
I had a choice. Prison or helping soldiers to catalogue the tombs.
Ah, so you are the antiquarian Merti spoke of. You have been researching the Maat ritual, huh?
Raz, breath, keep your voice down. If Atami's men hear that I've been hiding things from them, walk with me.
Amun.
We're in the necropolis of the nobles. So this is part of ancient Thebes. So Thebes was called Waset in ancient times, and the city and the temples were on the east side of the river, and the necropolis were on the west side of the river. And this is partly because the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and it is associated with life when it rises and death when it sets.
Twin plumes of Amun. The ritual restores Maat to everything under the sky, in honor of the Lord of Thebes and the god's wife at his side. The priests have the relic. She has been lying to me from the beginning.
Look at this. Tell me, what do you see?
I love this little library in here. It's great. She reminds me of myself, constantly looking through archives for little pieces of information.
A great king, his soul fragmented, does not say why he is here. Revenge? Or he has unfinished business?
It's interesting that she's reading all of this for him. I wonder if they're trying to get at the fact that by this period in time, there wouldn't be that many people left who could still read Egyptian. The administration now spoke in Greek, or administrative documents would have been in Greek.
I know what needs to be done.
So I think we're in the tomb of Rameses II now. This sarcophagus is more of an Old Kingdom design, with the facade that's on there, but they did have stone sarcophagi, and actually the tomb of Rameses II is KV7, and it's not in very good condition. I think that probably the decoration that they've got on the walls here, it's probably just a bit of a mixture of other tombs that are in the Valley of the Kings, because they're all alike, but none of them are exactly the same. We're now talking to Nefertari, who was Ramses' wife, or great royal wife. And she is depicted here as a bar bird. So a bar was a part of what made you an individual. The ancient Egyptians believed that you needed, in order to be reincarnated in the afterlife, you needed to have various aspects of yourself be preserved. And the bar was one of them. This is a really nice depiction, I think, of a bar bird. We do have pictures of them in papyri, on tomb walls, and there are models of bar birds as well, and it really was a human-headed bird. So the bar is a part of what makes you you. And in order for you to be reborn, you needed to preserve the body, the bar, the ka, the ren, which was your name, and the shoot, which was your shadow. All of these parts would allow you to become something called an akh in the afterlife, which was a transfigured dead, and allow you to keep on living in the afterlife. The bar of Nefertari here is asking for help. she's asking for you to help Rameses
What will you have me do?
reaching the afterlife.
I will whisper the ritual in your ear.
So we're still inside of the afterlife of Rameses II here. This one is called Heb Sed. Although it's perhaps the most unconventional of the depictions of the afterlife here, it's actually really interesting. Because what they've done is they've created an afterlife that is very specific to Ramses II himself. What we're looking at here is the remnants of the Battle of Kadesh, which was a famous victory, maybe victory, of Ramses II. He presented it as a very famous and great victory. Having this in his afterlife is kind of unusual, and maybe is indicating that part of the problem, why he cannot later rest. But his afterlife being called Heb Sed is sort of divergent from what we really think. But I don't know, I think it's good, and I don't think it's necessarily unlikely either, because the Heb Sed was a festival that the pharaoh would celebrate on his 30th year and then every few years after. And Ramesses II is known to have celebrated about 13 or 14 of these festivals because he lived a long time.
I know what it is like to lose someone you love.
Right, we're following Bayek now into the tomb of Tutankhamun. The tomb of Tutankhamun, KV62, is obviously very famous. One of the only examples we have of an intact tomb of a king. Now it's actually a really, really nice reconstruction of the tomb. So this room that they're in with all the objects was very, very crowded like that. There was another little side room. He went into the side room just before he went through into the main room. That really was there as well. And then in the main room, that sarcophagus there does look pretty like the stone sarcophagus that he had. It was surrounded by some shrines, so it was actually very difficult to see and get into that room when it was full. They skipped that part because otherwise you would not be able to fit in the room.
Give me the orb. I do not want to kill you.
My mother told me this is our role. To restore Maat and put Amun back on his throne.
So restoring Maat is something that kings would also often say that they were going to do after something had happened. So it is probably something that Tutankhamun would have thought he was doing after Akhenaten and Nefertiti died. And he, in fact, did try to restore the old ways, if you like. He returned the administrative capital to Memphis, and he started restoring the monuments that had been damaged in his father's time.
Our people, your duty. I will not betray mine.
This is a nice depiction. The mask looks pretty good, like the mask of Tutankhamun. And he actually is wearing a belt that has a sort of scarab on it, which looks quite like something that was found in his tomb.
Why did he give me the power to finish what she started? Only for me to fail.
Amun never gave you power. He gave you a choice.
The feather of Maat? No! My heart is too heavy.
Something that is absolute my favorite about this is that Maat is represented by a feather. Now, if you played any of the other Assassin's Creed games, you would know that the feather is something that is present. Here it is, the feather. So in this game, it's the feather of Maat. But it's present in the very first Assassin's Creed game. A feather is something that they use to dip into the blood of the person that they just killed. Essentially, back then it was to prove that you killed them, so you would take the feather back. But the fact that they have managed to bring all of that kind of full circle back to the beginning of this is how it occurred is the kind of storytelling that you just don't get often. You know, and as someone who loves ancient Egypt and also loves the Assassin's Creed games, when I first saw this, I was just like blown away because it makes so much sense. And the very first game came out, I think it was in 2007. So like to have that kind of consistency throughout your game was, for me, it was just amazing. Okay, so we are looking at a guy called Sutek here. Sutek was a descendant of Rameses II. And what I really like about this is that they decided to give him red hair, which we think that Rameses II did have. And when you look at him and you know that, actually his face looks a little bit like the mummy of Rameses II.
There are no secrets left in this valley.
It's also kind of a funny little comment that he made there as well, saying that there's no secrets left in the valley, because the number of people that have tried to find things in the Valley of the Kings and either succeeded or failed, but then declared that there is nothing left to find is probably not countable.
We will meet again in the Field of Reeds. I will see to it.
Thank you for joining me as we looked at the Curse of the Pharaohs, the DLC from Assassin's Creed Origins. I hope you enjoyed it, because I did. If you would like to find out more, please check out the Echoes of History channel.